So once again, hello everyone. I'm super excited to host another SaaStock event. My name is Matic, and I will be your host today. In this episode, we will be talking with Dusan Omercevic, CEO at Cleanshelf, now VP of Product at LeanIX. We will be discussing SaaS valuations, exit planning, and AMA market, and of course how they started 4 or 5 years ago. So welcome, Dusan, to the show. Glad to have you back.
Glad to be here, and thank you all attendees for joining today. Should I zoom in a bit more, or am I fine like this?
I think we are doing fine. Thank you. So awesome. Before we go deep into the acquisition and with LeanIX, would you explain what is Cleanshelf and how do you make money?
So Cleanshelf was a leading SaaS management solution. So we had some of the biggest enterprises in the world manage their SaaS portfolios. So couple of companies we are especially proud are Harry's, Dollar Shave Club, Fleur Systems, Degreed. We ride on this trend of companies moving to the cloud, buying software as a service. And now with companies using hundreds of subscriptions, they can no longer manage that in a simple spreadsheet.
Okay, perfect. So there was almost 1,000 AMA deals back in 2019, which was 30% more than the year before. And if the crunch base is correct, almost 2,000 in 2020. So why is SaaS B2B so popular and growing in the recent years or the last decade?
It's because of the recurring revenue. So once you become a key part of company processes, it's really hard to replace you. And the recurring revenue that SaaS companies are getting are basically 85 to 90% gross margin. So if you build a successful SaaS company, it comes as close to a money printing machine as you can imagine.
I remember this sentence when we were driving in Silicon Valley to your office, and you said to me, SaaS is the closest you can get to printing money. And I was, oh my God. And at that time, we were struggling with our previous company. We were not printing so much money. So I was wondering, what does it mean? Cool. So for those that don't know, let's go first to AMA and how does AMA merger and acquisition works in the SaaS space?
So it always starts with a common vision, so that the acquirer has these three options. It's either buy, build, or partner. So when there is kind of a missing product in acquirer's product portfolio, they can either get their internal team to build it, and they can partner with someone who already has the product, or they outright buy the company with the product.
Okay, so and in which stage of the product or the company did you decide that it's the right time to merge with LeanIX?
Yeah, so in our end, it was really kind of a full alignment on the product vision. So Andre Christ, the CEO of LeanIX, showed me their product roadmap, and there were 5 boxes that Cleanshelf fits in perfectly. So 5 boxes on the product roadmap. If Cleanshelf would be joining, those boxes would immediately become green. And it was that alignment on product vision that got initial spark, and the more we spoke, the more we saw alignment, not just on the product side, but also on general approach to basically how to run business. We saw a lot of cultural alignment. We both me and Andre have an ambition to build an iconic SaaS company. So we want to build $1 billion SaaS company out of Europe, and there was a lot of alignment there. So it was really straightforward conversation from there on.
Perfect. So speaking of Europe, you're still based in San Francisco. What are the landscapes now in 2021? Is Europe getting stronger for SaaS B2B, or is still the Bay Area the place where we should go if you want to build a unicorn?
So definitely Silicon Valley has some advantages, so access to capital, talent, any expertise that you want is unprecedented, so not comparable to any other place. But on the other hand, it's also a competition, which is quite hard to kind of overcome. So there are some advantages to being outside of Silicon Valley bubble. And in our particular case, since our market has now several competitors, but none of them is really focused on Europe. So none of the key competitors is based in Europe. So having actually a strong base and headquarters in Europe will now give us a competitive edge for European customers.
Are you staying in San Francisco, or are you moving to Ljubljana or to Europe with the team?
So the development team is in Ljubljana. So the whole time it was Ljubljana. So LeanIX has their US headquarters in Boston. We will kind of use our presence in San Francisco and Denver to basically expand LeanIX's geographic distribution. But in reality, at the moment, location is really irrelevant because the whole company is working from home. So we don't actually know where people are.
Yeah, speaking of working from home, what's your prediction on when we are getting back to, I wouldn't use back to normal, but back to office work? Because honestly, I don't believe that remote work is for everybody. You know, you need to motivate people to work in the office, and etc. etc. So what is your prediction? What will happen in 2022? And we will have a hybrid working from home and from the office, or is the office space totally dead?
It very much depends on success of vaccination. So if vaccines will be successfully deployed and bringing the pandemic to an end, I expect that in the fall there will be kind of encouragement for people to come back to the office. And then in 2022, I believe that in large part organizations will again insist on people to work from the office.
Okay.
When it comes to engineering, the war for talent at the moment is so intense that we just do whatever engineers want, and engineers are all kinds. Some prefer to work from home all the time, some prefer to work from office all the time, and majority actually prefer a hybrid model. So in Ljubljana, we just moved to a new office, which we designed more as a co-working place. So if you want to work from the office all the time, yeah, you have all the option. But if this is more like something that you want to kind of come once a week to meet with colleagues, discuss a couple of things in person, that's an option as well. So I believe at LeanIX, including Slovenian and US offices, we will move to hybrid model, and in large part leave this to employees, to their judgment. The learnings from the last year is that teams are really good at working remotely, but cross-team collaboration took a substantial hit. So it's really hard to gel different teams, different departments together if there is not this water cooler serendipity or lunch meetings and all that. So Zoom meetings are super productive, but that's also one of their deficiencies.
If you don't mind, let's move like 5 years back when you started the company. So previously you were working with Samantha, and then you started the Cleanshelf. I think it has the other name before Cleanshelf, something else.
Yeah, some funny name that we won't even repeat.
Okay,
so,
okay.
But actually, that's great, because if you start with some name which is not really good, you don't get emotionally attached to it. And when you encounter the proper name, it's much easier to make a shift.
So how did you grow? So how did you grow the team, and how did you grow the company? So obviously you went for the upmarket early on. You raised money also. This was probably the plan from the beginning. So can you share a little bit of the story from, let's say, 0 to LeanIX?
One.
Yeah, to one.
Yeah, actually it was 0 to 1. And yeah, so this is what they call the impossible journey. And looking back, it was really a series of lucky breaks. So if one would plan this, you would never make it work. But yeah, it started kind of me being interested whether there is a technical solution to the problem of SaaS management. Can you automatically pull in the data from SaaS vendors and then do what otherwise people would need to do manually? Then first exploration, whether there is market for it. And that's what I did in 2016. And once I had kind of that initial proof, yeah, I got the angel investment, which enabled me to hire the first engineer. So it was the two of us. This in turn enabled us to get a couple of more customers. And a couple of more customers, a bit more recurring revenue got us to seed investment from LaunchHub. This enabled us to hire a couple of more people and the first sales people in US, which in turn generated some more ARR, got us to Series A investment by Dawn Capital a year ago. And it's kind of step by step. Yeah, that's how we grew over the past 5 years.
Yeah, it sounds so easy, but I guess it was not. Let's start with the sales. So obviously you did sales one-on-one for the first year or two on your own. But then at which point did you start thinking about hiring the sales team? Did you hire one person or maybe three sales reps? And what processes did you set up for the sales team?
Yeah, so I'm engineer by background. So of course I wanted to hire the salesperson immediately to avoid selling myself. But the truth is that CEO of an enterprise software company needs to be a very good salesperson himself or herself. If you can't sell, you are not the CEO. You should get someone else to be the CEO. It's that simple. So yeah, the first 2 years I was on myself. Then I hired one lady. Unfortunately, she was not the right fit, so we parted ways a month later. The second US hire on the sales side was much more successful. So Patrick, he's still with us even now, 3 years later. So that hire was, of course, super important for our success. Then I got to meet one experienced head of sales from Silicon Valley, who brought along some additional sales expertise and lead generation practice. And it kind of grows partially organically, but definitely with a lot of push from my end.
Yeah. So customer success is one of the departments that is really important in SaaS, and also I believe in all other industries sooner or later. Basically because of the SaaS model, so you get the profits in the coming years or months, and you want to keep these customers to either not churn, to expand the revenue, etc., etc. So when did you start with the customer success tactics, and how did it improve your numbers, your churn, and your actually people that I talk with usually confuse customer success and customer support, and then at that point I usually say, okay, customer support is a cost center, customer success, it should be a revenue center, and it's really important to understand the customer success, especially in the enterprise.
Yeah, SaaS and customer success are basically the one and same thing. So there is no SaaS without customer success. So even when I was it was just me on the team, customer success was big part of my activities. And of course, I was super happy when I got resources to hire Gaspar as our second employee and the first customer success person. And you can't really build a SaaS company if your churn is over 10%. So you really need to strive that your churn is less than 10%, because then this becomes like a really valuable business. Because of course the cost of customer acquisition are typically at least 6 months, but more often 18 to 24 months. So first and second year, you're basically just paying back the investment in customer acquisition, and only third year and later, you are starting to get that money printing machine that we discussed initially. But of course, if customers are churning after the first or second year, the model is not working. So preventing churn, making customers successful is the most important thing in SaaS business.
So how did you start? I mean, what was the customer success in practice for you at the beginning when you started? How did it look like in practice?
So in our case, it's very high touch because we have a few very valuable customers. So it's a lot in personal, based on personal relation, and being very reactive and solving all the customer problems, both proactively and reactively. And so at Cleanshelf, we had 2 customer success managers. So the process was being refined and defined. But now at LeanIX, we have 20 customer success managers. So I can already observe how much more professional that organization is, how much more defined process, how much more resources available to customer success managers to make customers successful through technology.
Yeah, so for those that never heard about customer success or don't understand the customer success, so for each customer that you're losing, you have to replace the customer, which comes with the cost. So ideally, you have 0 churn rate. That's ideally. And if you find the renewal, if you find the expansion revenue, which means that you can sell the same product with more integrations or with more features, then you get to the net negative churn, which brings you additional revenue. And at that point, your customer success department becomes the sales department. And at the enterprise level, it's really important to understand that, because the lifetime value of your customers are probably much higher than if you're selling the simple CRM or something like that.
I would just add that customer success is the reason why SaaS is such amazing model for everybody involved. So when you buy, for example, a piece of hardware, it's up to you to make that piece of hardware successful and working for you. Similarly, if you buy an on-prem server, but with SaaS model, you have a whole team there focused on you, working in the back to make you successful. So the vendors are now much more motivated to make their customers successful than what was in the past. And I think that down the road, that will completely transform the economy.
So speaking about customer success and churn, does it have any influence or impact also on the acquisition? Basically, when you are either selling or acquiring other companies, the lawyers and the buyer usually check how many customers are you losing. So it was strategically placed. Okay, now let's focus more on customer success before we go to the merger with LeanIX. Should we reduce churn and should we let's say fix our metrics?
So you need to be focused on reducing churn all the time, because otherwise you have no business. So basically, majority of the time, what SaaS companies are doing is focus on churn. So there's no special activity before M&A or fundraising, because you need to be always focused on churn. That's by far the most important metric of a successful SaaS business. So that's something you need to do all the time.
Yeah. So you said that you went up market from the start. I remember speaking with Emeric from Agora Pulse about their model. So they were attacking SMEs and startups, and because of attacking startups, their churn rate was, I think, 12%. In the year 5, which is really high, and then suddenly they decided, okay, we are not going after startups anymore, and they switched the model to SMEs, and that now the churn is, I think, 3.5% or something like that. So this is the magnitude what you can get for the right market. So your market was always enterprise, so you never thought about this to go for startups. Obviously not startups because they don't have so much, they don't use so many tools.
Yeah, actually we started in SMB space and mostly startups, and the reason is the nature of our space. So startups are early adopters of SaaS. And 5 years ago, enterprises were not so comfortable buying software as a service. That has certainly changed now, and now we see basically every enterprise out there is trying to become cloud first, but 5 years ago it was certainly not the case. Yeah. So we started with startups, and then slowly moved over the years to increasingly larger customers.
Okay. How did you align the pricing for the different customers then? I mean, did you because you were one of the first tools on the market, so you had to somehow reinvent the pricing. Did you went for the value-based pricing? So how much value can you bring to the table? And pricing is obviously very important for the SaaS business. So what are the learnings from the pricing?
Yeah, so I'm a strong believer that pricing defines the product. So it's price first, everything else later. So what typically happens is that you grandfather customers. So you don't change pricing of existing customers, but you try to bring new customers to a new model, and you iterate on pricing all the time. That's not something static that you leave unchanged for several years. You iterate on it all the time. And in enterprise space, there is no such thing as fixed pricing schedule. There is a lot of kind of specifics. So you need to be flexible when you are dealing with these large customers.
You mean negotiating or discounts, or you need to adapt to the size of the business?
Well, the challenge that you have is, so in SMB space, you basically experiment on 10 customers, and then you try the model on the next 100 customers. Of course, in enterprise, that doesn't work. So you experiment on the first customer and then try to replicate the model on the next 10. But there are no more than 10 customers typically for this size for early startups. So you need to do a lot of guesswork, and you basically align yourself with what you learn on the sales call. So there is not much patterns to build upon because there is such a small sample size.
Yeah. So what's next now for Cleanshelf, and what's next for your team? So merging with LeanIX. So how did you merge the team and the processes and everything, and the product, of course? I'm assuming this will take, or it takes a couple of months, and then once you are merged together, what's next for on the horizon for both companies?
So we'll become we now become part of LeanIX family. Cleanshelf will become the product called SaaS Intelligence, and it continued to be offered as a standalone product, but there is strong kind of alignment with the enterprise architect suite. So the first product of LeanIX. So we are bringing a lot of technology and capabilities from Cleanshelf into this tool supporting enterprise architects at some of the biggest companies in the world, such as Salesforce, Dropbox, Workday, Adidas, DHL, so you name it.
Cool. Are you hiring at the moment, or?
The Slovenia team is growing. So in Ljubljana, we are hiring additional engineers. So our VP of engineering, Jost, will be very happy if we have some engineers interested to work on very, very interesting problems. And we'll be very happy to hear from you.
Perfect. So if any engineers are listening to this, being Jost. So I will move now to attendees if they have any questions. Please type the questions in the chat below, and I can make you a host. I was hoping that Alex will join Alex Tuma from SaaStock will join today, because he was super happy that we are hosting Dusan, but I guess
we have some history there. Yes.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, Dusan, I just have the last one. So how much for the SaaS founders that want to sell the company, not merge with other companies, how well you have to be prepared in terms of documentation, in terms of your IPs and stuff like that. I spoke with Thomas Male from FA International, and he was always advocating for everything should be documented and stuff like that. Be prepared. So on the ground level, what we need to know before we start selling the company? Beside the numbers and who is the buyer, but I mean internally.
Yeah, it very much depends on the size of the company. So your size. So we were 40 people at the time of acquisition. So we were not small, but not that big. It definitely helped that a year ago we raised Series A, and the due diligence that we did at that time was laying the groundwork also for the acquisition. I was nonetheless quite surprised by the thoroughness of the due diligence as part of the acquisition, because that was much more intense than for Series A. And Series A was intense, but this was on entirely different level. So I was very lucky that I have amazing head of finance. So Anna did like amazing work that in 4 weeks we provided basically all the documentation to finalize the due diligence. I was also extremely well prepared because we got acquisition offers basically from the start. So the first acquisition offer we got was more than 3 years ago. So we had some kind of early experience how that looks. So we got already a very good relation with some amazing bankers from San Francisco, GP Bullhound, and having their help was instrumental in running a very smooth process. Another very fortunate thing was that we had one of the best lawyers in the world, so Goodwin, being with us from the start. So they incorporated us, were with us with all funding rounds, and they basically had all the legal and other documentation ready, and they knew us extremely well. So despite having all this groundwork done, it was still amazing amount of work required. So I was explaining to the team that so if you buy a used car, what you do is, you walk around the car, maybe take it for a test drive. But if you buy used company, how do you evaluate it? And that's exactly what happened during the due diligence. So the buyer was evaluating the company from many different angles, trying to assess all aspects of the business and risk exposure, and making sure that what they are buying is really what was promised to them.
But they're buying the technology, the team, the knowledge, and the assets.
And all the risk and all the skeletons in the closet, which I hope there are none, and all the unexpected things. So when you buy a company, and you buy a lot of things you know, and a lot of things you don't know.
Cool. So since we don't have any questions, Dusan, once again, thank you very much for taking the time. I wish you all the best in the new role, and I hope that we can host you again in the future with the new ventures and with the new business.
if I may just kind of last note, since I hope we have some prospective startup founders in the audience, I would just say that Cleanshelf is not the only proof that you can start a global B2B SaaS company from this space. GTM Hub is another super successful company, actually starting in Bulgaria by Croatian founder. So it's possible to do it, even it might look quite crazy when you start and try to build a sophisticated B2B SaaS company selling to some of the largest enterprises in the world.
Yeah, it's easy to connect the dots when you look back. Okay, so thanks again, Dusan. Wish you all the best.
Likewise, thank you.
Bye, guys.